Hello, my name is Dan Johnson and welcome back to the Who podcast. This month, I'm in a completely different location. I mean, at one point, Will mentioned about doing it in a pub, which I thought was a horrendous idea because you're trying to sit there in a pub, people are trying to drink around you, and we're sitting there trying to do a podcast. I just felt like it was an awful idea and would never work. But today I'm in an extremely echoey room. And I'm here joined by one of my friends and somebody that hasn't really had much experience about Doctor Who at all, and that is Luke, who has had to put up with me, basically, with the podcast idea and stuff like that for the last couple of months. I mean, when did I meet you? December, was it? Properly in December.
Yeah, properly was December, I think.
Yeah, when we went out. And
yes.
It was that night, yes. And then since December, you've slowly learned very strange parts of my life, like the Doctor Who stuff.
It's something you enjoy.
I mean, I fear that Han tells you like slightly too much about my life, where it's like, oh, Dan's just bought another sonic screwdriver, and like you're sitting there going, and I'm slowly going down in your like friends list.
Oh no, that's like Han telling
credibility.
you I've bought. Oh, I don't know.
FIFA packs.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
I know, but I think there's a difference between buying a physical, like a toy, even though it's aimed sometimes at other people that are a bit older. It is still a toy. And there's a difference between one of them and then buying things for like FIFA.
See, the way I'd say it is something like that. I'd say it was more of a collectible.
Yeah, yeah. That's what a lot of mine are about. Is like that sonic screwdriver I bought is worth in on the second hand market it's worth about £200. Yeah, I bet your FIFA packs aren't worth that much. And that's probably only going to grow. Admittedly, I mean, I think it varies with different things. But I think it might actually plummet because they've just announced a regular version. But there's various things that do feel like they're massive investments. In fact, my sister keeps saying that when you die, can I have all your collection? Because then I can start selling it. And then I was like, right, okay. She's like, how much is this all worth? And I was like, I'm not going to tell you in case it disappears out my bedroom one night.
But then again, if you don't tell her how much she's worth, she'll probably just flog it for a tenner.
That is the issue, yeah. But I don't want to flog her in it at all if I can help it. I don't want to come back from the pub like we did last night and I walked around and she went, I've hidden all your sonic screwdrivers. They were just sitting in the kitchen cupboard.
What, all of them in one place or just dotted around? She
took 4 that were just sort of on the side. She took 4 and she put them in the kitchen cupboard and left them there. So and when I got back last night, it was nearly 1 o'clock and I was like, I'm not going to go looking for sonic screwdrivers in the middle of the night. So I woke up the next morning and tried to find it.
I've done that with eggs before, but I've put them under mugs. So when people have pulled the mug out, the egg's gone.
Why eggs in particular, though?
It's just something small and easy you can hide, isn't it?
Get egged.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like booby traps and cupboards.
Yes.
So that they fall out as soon as you open the door.
Looking back, I do feel a bit evil.
It's devil child running around, sticking eggs in cupboards. Right. Should we get back on the subject of what we're talking about?
Yes.
Doctor Who. Then.
Yes.
I know that you don't have much, but would you like to explain to the people at home about what you know about it? If not from me, maybe because a lot of people have said that instead of actually knowing Doctor Who, they've known the Sarah Jane Adventures, or they used to see that on CBBC.
I've watched that.
Yeah.
I used to watch that, to be fair. I know there's been about 7 or 8 Doctors, hence the amount of screwdrivers.
Slightly more than that, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Slightly more.
I know Matt Smith is the most recent one.
Whoa.
Is he?
No.
Who is it at the minute?
David Tennant at the minute, again.
That's why I didn't realise
you've got them confused, yeah? Second run of David Tennant at the minute.
That was it.
This year.
And it was Matt Smith at one point, and it was David Tennant before him.
Yes, yeah. So you understand that there's a regeneration cycle and the
it's a bit like
face changes and
something like James Bond sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's written like into the show's lore that the character can change their face, their personality.
Yeah.
When they die. That's generally it can happen. So it's like it could be anything, radiation to long drops. I think happened once and stuff like that. So. But you say you watched a bit of Sarah Jane Adventures. Did you have anything knowledge-wise from that, or was it just do you just remember watching it? Nothing in
Yeah, no, I remember watching it. I remember some distinct thing. I remember at one point I was watching the episode of where this girl grew up a lot quicker, like aged a lot quicker than something like a day. She grew up to be like 9 or 10 rather than a day old.
That's Black Mirror, isn't it? No, is it?
No, it was Sarah Jane Adventure. Because I can't remember Sarah Jane's sidekick at the time.
Sidekick, yeah.
He told her a joke right at the start of the episode, saying, "Oh, what do you call a man with paper trousers? Russell." And then later at the end of the episode, she's like, "So why do you call a man with paper trousers Russell?" So knowing that I don't really know. That's all.
This feels.
A bit of a
I
tangent.
really want this to be true, though. I feel like that rings a bell to me, but I feel I don't watch Sarah Jane Adventures enough.
I'm gonna have to Google it.
To understand.
I'm gonna have to Google it.
What you're talking about.
Right, hang on.
Because I always feel quite saddened by Sarah Jane Adventures because Elizabeth Sladen died, like while they were filming one of the series. There's an episode about. Are you thinking about Sky, the companion, like towards the end, where she's like really grown up for her age?
Yeah.
In fact, it does ring a bell now. This is the series that I tend not to watch because she was ill when they filmed it.
Right.
And you can see that she's slightly less. I mean, she's still very good in it. She's still very much Sarah Jane, but she feels slightly less herself. And of course, with the context that we now know,
yeah,
it becomes quite saddening. But I've forgotten about Sky. Yeah, she only appears for like 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Because that's all they filmed. It's very strange how people remember things like that, though.
No, I know.
Little bits. Like
it's like there's so many little things I remember about other things that just think, and some people go, "How? Why?
Yeah.
Do you know or remember that?"
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I remember every episode of Doctor Who in terms of their episode titles, and given a bit of time, sometimes I can actually say them all from start to finish. I've never done it.
That's pretty impressive.
That's really like that is a dull party trick. Just sit in rows, the end of the world, the upright. Like that goes on for ages. But I think it was more of a compulsion, really.
Yeah.
And people go, "That's so cool." I was like, I'm quite saddened by the fact that I can do that.
Oh,
but
no, I can imagine it'd be quite impressive.
You could bear me saying like 174 titles of episodes.
I don't think it would take you that long thinking about it. An hour tops.
An hour maybe. But look, it's a very, very strange thing to do, and you're condoning me doing that now. I'm thinking about how long it would take me and whether I should actually do it. It's a dangerous move.
Why not?
Make a really dull video. Hello, welcome to the podcast this month. I'm going to recite every episode of Doctor Who in order for your listening pleasure.
See how quick you can do it, see if you can get a Guinness World Record or something.
I am so curious to know if there's a Guinness World Record in it now. There can't be.
If there is, you'll have to.
I'll have to try and beat it. I feel like somebody could definitely do it better than me because they've probably got control of their own tongue. Me, I'm all over the place in terms of how I talk. So
train yourself.
I'm gonna have to learn how to talk again then, aren't I? So quite limited knowledge, but you have sort of you know about the premise of what the show is.
Yeah.
And then you understand that there's Daleks and Cybermen and that the Doctor,
Weeping Angels.
The Weeping Angels. Yeah.
That's one episode I did watch.
Blink. Yeah.
That
is
because every time he turned his back, they'd move.
Yeah.
And then every time he'd look at him, they'd be still.
That's recited as, I think, a lot of people's... If you don't know Doctor Who, as I found out, that's the episode that people talk about because I think both Han and Amy have both spoken about that episode to me.
Yeah.
Going, I saw the one with the Weeping Angels, and even, just in general conversation, because for some reason Han started introducing me as, Dan really likes Doctor Who. Like, she was sticking a big, like, bully me sign across my forehead. And... So people would say to me like, "Oh, I love the Weeping Angels" and that kind of stuff, but because they were really frightening.
The one thing I do remember about that episode is the fact that he ended up realising how to stop them by making them all look at each other, surrounding himself.
Yeah, that's a good memory.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
I could see the clogs.
Clogs.
the cogs turning in your head as you start to work out that bit of information. But yeah. No, but that's, to be honest, I wouldn't expect you to. I understand that it's not your sort of area.
Yeah.
So when you said that you wanted to do this, I was a bit like, is he sure? Does he know what we're going to talk about?
Yeah. It's all fun and games, isn't it?
Yeah, you're far too relaxed about everything. It's actually quite concerning, by the way.
Yeah, Han said that a lot of times, to be fair. She's always stressing out about something, and I just tell her to chill, and then she looks like she wants to murder me.
Don't tell someone to chill.
No, I know.
When they're really like a nervous person, like me.
Yeah. It's,
You know,
it's not the best
just
thing. But
stop worrying. Like that cure.
take a deep breath, you're fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I know that obviously you're interested in much. You have passions outside of Doctor Who, so and outside of sort of sci-fi or television. You know, with the football and drinking, and going outside, and
You say drinking like I'm an alcoholic.
I didn't mean it as such.
I only had a pint the other night at home, to be fair. Didn't even have to go out for it. That makes me sound so sad and lonely.
Congratulations. What would you like me to say?
Oh, I don't even know. Oh dear.
No, but I understand obviously that not everybody likes Doctor Who, so it's not like not your friend anymore just because you haven't seen it. That would be quite ridiculous. So we'll get started then. So today we're doing something called that is Doctor Who Fact or Fiction, where I'm going to put things to Luke, and Luke's going to work out if I am lying through my teeth and I've made them up this afternoon, or they are actually elements that have been in Doctor Who at some stage. And hopefully for you at home there'll be something that you might not know also. So are you ready? Should we start with the first one then?
Yeah, go on.
So,
I reckon it'll be
Before we started recording, we talked about Daleks, yeah?
yes.
Pepper pots, the ice
Yes,
stalks,
that was it.
the sort of bronze things,
Yeah.
yeah, with the balls for some reason, yeah. Those creatures, when they were devised in 1963, so when the show first came about, they were written with the idea of there being slightly fascist society, and then it was slowly expanded upon in many other releases. So would you say that is truthful compared to 63, you're 20 years or less than 20 years since the Second World War?
So yeah, I don't know. I think so.
You're gonna go with yes.
I'm gonna go with yes.
That's a nice one. Okay, I'm easing you into it slightly. Yeah. So there's a story called Genesis of the Daleks. This was not till the 70s really that the actual idea of them came about in terms of their backstory. So maybe I was slightly wrong in that fact. Now I think about it, but in that story they are extremely like the Nazis. They are walking around in sort of black uniforms with logos. They want to kill anything that's any different to them. Right. And then there's also sort of Dalek civil wars like later on that are fought over the idea that you have to be a pure blood Dalek and not something else. So they can never really evolve in that fact. And I think that's probably why the Daleks were so successful, in the fact that they were the first proper monsters in Doctor Who that really felt like they were hitting at home somewhere, and that was before they even gave them proper backstories as well. So it says a lot. There's a whole thing about Dalek mania. It's bonkers.
Dalek mania.
Yeah. So because I thought movies were going to be made about Daleks being on their own and stuff like that, but it never really came about. And it's just I said the internet. They didn't have the internet, but society went crazy for Daleks. So just about everything you could want, merchandise wise, was made for the Daleks, and people collect it. We were talking about the collectability of stuff, and so if there was a Dalek costume, believe it or not, that was basically like a bag, and then a plunger, and then a sort of crappy plastic gun.
Right.
And people used to run down the street, this is back in the 60s, with this balaclava thing on. It made them look like they were wearing, do you know that, a hazmat suit or something like that. And I don't think it even fitted properly. And they just sort of ran down the street with a plunger in one hand and this toy little gun thing in the other, and ran down the street. Simpler times.
Yeah, now you see people cosplaying with stupidly accurate.
Yeah, well, because I even said the other day about buying a Dalek.
Makes it sound like a pet.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I was here and I said to AB and Hannah, I was like, can I buy a Dalek? It's like, what, 1,500? For like a life-size one. They're like, no. I went, I can't store it in my house because my parents will kill me. Can I stick it in your garage?
I wouldn't have a problem with
You
it.
couldn't fit a car in there anyway.
No, exactly. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
So
I say go for it.
I'll just come and visit it.
Yeah. When she opens up the garage one day, she's like, what's this? Dan's Dalek?
No. Yeah. A little fancy that will never actually happen because I feel like I'm not going to go and buy a Dalek. But I love the idea that I will just decide to buy one day.
Yeah.
They'll come about. So my next one then for you is a little bit of a silly one. There's once a dinosaur in the Thames, and the Doctor referred to it as a big sexy woman.
Judging by some of the episodes I've watched before, and I know the fact that the Doctor can be quite sarcastic and funny,
Yeah.
I'd say it's true, but I'm a bit hesitant.
You're unsure whether you feel like you don't want to get it wrong. I'm not going to judge you
Yeah,
for
no,
not getting it wrong.
The thing is, though, I feel like it could be something he said,
Mm.
and it could have been something that happened, but at the same time, I'm in two minds in the fact that it could just be something like you say you've made up completely.
Yeah, but that's what you got.
Yeah,
That's the name of the game.
I'd say you've made it up.
You think I've made it up?
I think you've made it up.
I didn't actually. It
Oh.
actually happened in the show. So it's Peter Capaldi episode.
Right.
So the big sexy woman is done in a deep Scottish accent.
Right.
And there is a dinosaur in the Thames, but as you can imagine, dinosaur in the Thames very expensive to film. So it does end up being, I think, burnt. In fact.
Oh right.
Yeah. It's the Doctor Who loves a gimmick, I think, and the idea that the new Doctor, because this is like his first episode, it's called Deep Breath. He arrives in the TARDIS, but the TARDIS is inside of a dinosaur. So, because if you travel with something on the outside, it brings it with you.
Right.
So they brought the dinosaur with them essentially, and then the dinosaur spits them out, and they land on the Thames. Honestly, there's sort of stuff that to me it sounds so natural, because, I mean, I've not thought of anything other, and then you tell it to someone else and they go, "You what?"
Well, yeah. I mean, there's things I've watched, like some movies I've watched before, where I've spoken about what's happened, and then people are like, "What? What?
Yeah.
Sort of thing."
So it's one of those things where you get cultured. No, you learn that sort of, it's almost like there's a certain brand of idea that I think that is really good for Doctor Who. And there's certain thing, that's why I love it a lot, is because these sort of bonkers ideas can only work in Doctor Who, and they'll work nowhere else. Because you never find any other show.
I was going to say, I think
doing
that's
that.
what kind of makes Doctor Who a one-of-a-kind show thing.
Yeah, I think that's why so many people are into it, is because
Yeah.
just because the bonkersness of it. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
No. So with that in mind now, so a
Right.
little bit of your. So I've warmed you up a little bit with a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I think about it, anything you say could have
Exactly. I
happened.
thought I'd do one of
Ooh.
one good, one truth, and then one lie, and then try and really confuse you with the third one. So, we talked a little bit about generation. That you understood that that exists. So the first generation, which was in 1966, so all in black and white, was, now I can't prove this by the way, that I've not seen anything that proves this fact. There was a memo sent out from the offices that said that the regeneration should be like an LSD trip. Do you think I'm lying through my teeth? Or do you think that that is something that was actually said? So that's the process of regeneration, like from changing from one actor to another.
Yeah. I want to say that one's true.
You know, it's true.
I think that one's true.
I honestly only found it out this afternoon. It's true.
Is it?
Yeah, apparently so. Like I say, I can't actually fact check it because I've not seen the memo.
Yeah.
But it's extremely weird to think that went through especially when the BBC was such like prim and proper and like it was quite a progressive show in the fact that it was the first one to have a female producer.
Right.
And an Asian director as well. That was the first episode back in '63. And then at this point, they're going, we should make the first regeneration like an acid trip. Just make it really weird. And I have to say, having watched the episode, it's not much like an acid trip because technology was not there to try and do something so ambitious.
I think, obviously, with it being like that, in the way, like, it might have been what people suspected an LSD trip would have been like. It could have just probably what helped build such a big fan base. I don't know if I'm just talking rubbish there.
Do you mean that the idea
the fact that it gets you hooked? You're like, oh,
I don't know where you're going with it.
So obviously drugs have always been frowned upon, haven't they?
Yeah.
So then if people are like, oh yeah, that feels like it's an LSD trip. Obviously, people can get addicted to stuff like that.
You think that instead of describing the process, they were describing that they wanted it to be something that would like hook people in to keep going, essentially.
Yes,
I see what you mean. Yeah, I feel like it probably wasn't meant to be read like that. But I like your thinking there. But I suppose it had to be because if it wasn't this big spectacle because the only reason that it came about was there was a generation in the first place was because William Hartnell was getting too old to play the role. And because he was quite stubborn, quite old and not really well enough to continue to do this huge shoot which lasted, I think it was like most of the year. And back then how they used to film TV was like it was shot in one take and he couldn't remember his lines and there was all this techno blabble he had to get out and various things. And he started struggling with it, and then he was basically pushed out the door, and he was like, "No, I'm Doctor Who," and then they went, "Oh, but there's actually we've written it into this next story that you're going to change into a different actor, and that your species, which at the time had no context of or what they were, and it's all left ambiguous. Ambiguous? No, what am I looking for? Ambiguous. I think. Yeah, that sounds right. Towards the start, is actually, that you can regenerate, you can change your face. And I think that if it wasn't for that regeneration and that idea, there would not be any Doctor Who nowadays.
It's going to sound like a bit of a silly question, but Doctor Who's not meant to be full human, is he?
No, he's an alien completely.
Yeah, okay, thought so. With obviously being able to change his appearance and whatever whenever he wants.
So he's got 2 hearts. That's the sort of the main physical feature that changes is he has 2 hearts. I think the idea is I feel like it came about more recently, like 2005 recent. So the revival stuff, because I don't feel like that would have been. I don't remember that being mentioned in a story I've seen so far. But yeah, so there's like an X-ray and he's got 2 hearts, and I think I've always thought the idea is that when one stops, the other one keeps going, which is then the other person.
Right.
So the next Doctor, and then over time that one comes back, and then that becomes the next Doctor. So he's switching hearts. But it's also said that they write it into the script with the sort of jokes about the being different, like having different kidneys, different abilities to hold oxygen in order to survive space for longer and stuff like that. A lot of it is just for the script, so it flows and they can do what they want script wise. But it's quite an interesting thing because obviously with me that's sort of like this. I find that sort of behind the scenes stuff sometimes more interesting than some of the episodes, especially with the older one.
Yeah, fair enough.
So the next one is so the Doctor, as we talked about, is an alien. The planet he's from is called Gallifrey. My question to you is this an actual planet that has been discovered and then they've used it? So is Gallifrey real?
in the real world.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not going to have Time Lords on it, but do you think it's?
I thought you were going to ask
actually
something
real?
like, "Is this made up, or is this the name of one of his sidekicks or something?"
Yeah. Is there actually a planet called Gallifrey?
I'm going to go with no, because normally the name planet's something daft with loads of numbers and letters.
Funny you say that, because I wrote that going, that's a false one. There's no way that there's actually a planet called Gallifrey. And then I thought about it and went, actually, that does ring a bell somewhere.
Yeah, it turns out it's real.
So what it is they discovered a planet that is much like Gallifrey. Obviously, nowhere near us. But I don't know how they discovered it, but NASA discovered a planet that has 2 suns and is very sort of red like Gallifrey is. And they discovered this planet, and there was a petition to name it after Gallifrey, and then it never happened to my knowledge. Which means that, but like you say, it was just sort of like a bunch of numbers and letters, really, to me. It was. I think it was basically coordinates for where it is. So I thought I'd catch you out with that one. I have to say, I thought that would get you.
Oh, I almost feel like I should work for NASA at this point.
Because in my head, I went, like I said, I went through that process of going, it's not real, but I better check it's not real. So I suppose, not officially Gallifrey, close enough.
The next best thing.
Yeah. So the 10th Doctor, so David Tennant, my favourite Doctor, married the 5th Doctor's, so previous incarnations, real life daughter, who was also playing the Doctor's daughter on the show. That's quite a mind jump, that, isn't it?
So, David Tennant.
Yeah.
Is supposedly married the 5th Doctor's daughter.
Yeah.
And that daughter also played the Doctor's daughter.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no and say... I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But he married another Doctor's daughter.
You think that I just changed the number
Yeah.
and that was it?
Yeah, I think you're trying to catch me out.
That would have been clever. But I didn't.
I feel like I'm thinking too deep into it.
Yeah.
Thinking too deep into it all.
Yes. David Tennant is married to Georgia Tennant, who is Peter Davison's daughter, which means that in that family there are 2 Doctors.
I wonder if there's any beef at Christmas with it.
I know. Who
is the superior Doctor?
So he was the Doctor in the 80s.
Right.
And then obviously David Tennant was the Doctor in like 2006, 2010. And so he was my Doctor. And at conventions and stuff, I mean, David Tennant is, I would argue, the most popular Doctor.
For me, it's either him or Matt Smith is the most recognisable.
Yeah. And Peter Davison goes to Comic-Cons and stuff, for his own Doctor, with his own fans, and still gets plenty of people visiting him. But David Tennant's lines are huge.
Oh yeah, I can
they
imagine
are huge, and they are expensive. And he goes and he has a sign, and it's become a bit of a joke now, where he stands there with the sign and says he's not that special, something like that on it. And he walks around with this sign to his son-in-law, and then David's been doing that to his stepson.
Right.
Or I believe he's been around so long he actually doesn't really class him as his stepfather. But Ty Tennant, who he's been in quite a few shows now actually. He's been in something called Doom Patrol. He's been in House of Dragon. He's becoming a bigger and bigger actor. He's in Good Omens as well. But yeah, she also did play his daughter, and that's how they met, filming that episode.
Oh,
and you can sort of see, even maybe you can see it because of current context. But I mean, it did seem to be that David Tennant had quite a lot of relationships while filming Doctor Who. Some of them are rumoured, because it was believed that he was with Billie Piper for a while, his companion.
right.
And then he was with a lady who was playing a guest role in one of the episodes. And then there was, of course, the person that would become his wife. So it was a really strange dating history, really, for the Doctor, because there is just watching that episode and the episodes that he's been in relationships with, like Rose. So Rose and the Doctor, those two together. There's a love story between them, so they basically flirt the entire time, and it's really insufferable. So because of that, there's this very flirty nature to this Doctor, and I feel like if one Doctor was to be a complete slut, it would be him. Like of all the Doctors. Because you can kind of see the chemistry between them as they're in these scenes. That's where I was going with this, by the way.
But instead you just called him a massive slut.
I just called the Doctor a big slut, yeah. But hey, that was the best way I could describe it to you. Was I instead of just saying I feel like there's great chemistry, I went, the Doctor's basically just a massive slut, and you can feel that in the episodes. Okay, next then, getting towards the end, I have to say. The Doctor once played snooker with planets. It's as simple as that. That one. He once played snooker with planets.
No.
You're gonna go with no.
I'm gonna go with no.
Any reason behind that? Any thought? Just generally, you don't feel like that fits.
Can you imagine the size of the pool cue?
Okay.
No, I'm joking. No, I've got no idea. I'm just gonna go with no.
You're gonna go with no. Yeah, you are actually correct.
Oh.
The Doctor did not play pool or snooker with planets. It was done in Red Dwarf instead.
Right.
Yeah, which I think that episode is very strange, because I don't know if you've ever seen Red Dwarf.
I've seen little bits of it. It's the one with Rowan Atkinson in, isn't it?
Craig Charles.
What am I thinking of?
I don't know what you're thinking of.
Blackadder.
Maybe, yeah.
That's it.
Blackadder, yeah. So it's like there's
Craig Charles.
Craig Charles. You've got.
He did the voiceover on Takeshi's Castle.
Random. Robot Wars, I think.
I swear.
But that may be Takeshi's Castle as well, actually. But yeah, I think
if it's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, there's an episode. I can't remember the series or the episode of Red Dwarf, but the way they save the day is they sort of knock a planet into like a galaxy, and then it goes through, and they do it through essentially him with a pool cue,
right?
And he pokes it, and he goes off. And I think it's something more of a virtual pool cue that does it.
So no, you were right. He did do Robot Wars, but he also did Takeshi's Castle as well. And he was on Corrie as well. Yeah,
he's a huge actor. In fact, there's an episode of Red Dwarf when he goes into Corrie and meets himself. It gets really that a couple of episodes.
Sort of Inception, isn't it?
Is really meta, because as they're walking around, the DVD that I bought that has these episodes on it is in the background of all the shots, and the old DVDs are all. It's so bizarre.
I bet that messes up your mind.
Yeah, and then part of the plot is also on the back of the DVD, so they read the back of the DVD, because they sort of enter this thing, and they enter our real world, and they're like, this is Red Dwarf series 10 or something like that. They're going to work out what's going on.
Right.
And then they read the one to Back to Earth, and it's the same one that is also in my hand. And that really freaked me out, because I thought that was really clever, but really quite annoying at the same time.
No, I can understand
I thought it was really cliche and really in your face.
That sort of thing is
relying on the past.
Is what would keep me up at night, I think. Just having it pause on the telly, seeing it in the background, just holding it in my hand. Just reading it word for word over and over again.
In that episode, the Weeping Angel episode, Blink, there's the bit when he's on television and he's on a DVD extra, and then later on you find out that it's a timey-wimey thing where she's had that conversation, and he's taken the notes from that conversation that are being jotted down and used it to then create the video. So it's a sort of time loop sort of thing.
Right.
It's quite complicated, but it's a brilliant idea. And again, like I say, those sort of cool ideas is only something you can do in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go back a little bit.
Oh.
For a short while. Back in the 80s, 89, Doctor Who was cancelled, taken off the air. Mostly because television was changing. They didn't feel like it was living up to that idea anymore. Right. And really the BBC just didn't like the show. They wanted to get rid of it. so there was about a decade of just sort of campaigning, little productions being made, and it's they call it the wilderness years.
Right.
So during that time, a lot of movies were trying to get off the ground featuring the Doctor.
Hmm.
The one I'm talking to you now is, or was going to have, Michael Jackson play the lead role.
That seems too bizarre to be true.
Do you think that's fact, or do you think that
I think that's fiction.
You think it's fiction?
I think it's
You
fiction.
went straight in for that one, didn't you?
Yeah, it just sounds far too bizarre. I know Michael Jackson wasn't the most straightforward of characters,
Yeah.
shall we say. So I think that's just because when he retired from music and stuff, he moved to Devon. Michael Jackson did.
Michael Jackson did some very weird things.
Exactly, but I think that even for Michael Jackson, that's too much.
You think that's too much?
I think
for
that's
Michael
too
Jackson.
much for Michael Jackson.
Well, he did try and do it.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
Oh man.
He also tried to do Spider-Man as well. Yeah, so this is when Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man. It was like early 2000s. So this wasn't. It was sort of. So this was in the 90s, obviously, and then in the 2000s he tried to buy the rights to Spider-Man in order to then make a film where he played Spider-Man. And I don't think they were the only two cases. I do believe there are more.
Honestly, I can't imagine it.
But a very, very strange thing. There's also a few sort of more. The interesting thing I find about, as we talked about the regenerations and the changing of the actors, is that everyone has their own personal opinions about who they'd like them to be.
Mm.
So a lot of people say that Richard Ayoade should be, so Moss from the IT Crowd
Yes.
should be the Doctor, and I personally am slightly against that idea, because I feel like just because you act like the Doctor in person does not mean that you should play the Doctor.
Yeah.
Just
No,
because
I understand that.
You embody some of his characteristics does not mean you should be him.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's such a big role for somebody like him to take on as well. Which brings me on to my next section. Okay, the final section. I've got some names for you. Of people that may or may not have been in the running or got close to being the Doctor.
Okay.
The first one is Judi Dench.
See, I remember a good few years ago there was all this quabble about how people wanted a female Doctor, but how some people were also opposed to it.
Yeah.
But then Judi Dench, with being such a massive household name, I can imagine that she would have been in the running for it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go fact.
It is in fact a fact.
Is it?
You've got the
Excellent.
timings wrong.
Right.
I have to say. The timings are a bit off. This was not actually in sort of recent history.
Right.
Although, like I said, there's always been a bit of a call for there to be a female Doctor.
Mm.
And then Jodie Whittaker was cast. Which, the less is said about that, the better. No. But this was actually back in sort of 2004, just before they started bringing back Doctor Who. Russell T Davies was thinking of people he'd like to play the Doctor, and in the running for a short amount of time. I don't know whether any contact was actually made.
Her name was in it.
Her name was one of the people he considered to be the Doctor. I believe this was this was before he started writing it, I imagine.
Right.
I don't feel like you could write a series and then change the Doctor. You know, I feel like she plays such a very different Doctor to how any other actor would play it. So I think that this may just be absolute rubbish that never meant anything. But I love the idea of these people that could have been the Doctor and just never made it.
Yeah.
Okay, my next one is Alan Rickman. So Snape. From Harry Potter, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go fact for that one.
You know the fact?
Yeah.
That is in fact true.
I was going to say, I can just... Obviously, like I said, I've not watched many Doctor Who's at all, but I could just picture Alan Rickman being sort of one that's got a really dry sense of humour, sort of straight to the point with everything.
Yeah. I think I watched this film called Galaxy Quest a couple of weeks ago, and it's very... Well, it's not a very good film, but it's a cult classic film.
Right.
And watching him in that sort of space back... He plays an alien, but it's not... The premise of that film is that these people are actors, and it's a Star Trek spoof, where they were in a show, they go to Comic-Cons, and they sort of just they hate their lives now because it's all defined by this character they played like 20 years ago.
Right.
And then they're just sort of regurgitating the same rubbish. And the same catchphrases. And then these aliens, real aliens, turn up and say that we need you to save us. And we've seen you. They think the TV show's real.
Right.
So that it's a very strange premise. And the aliens are really, really bizarre because they just sort of make sounds and they walk around like this. They shuffle everywhere, essentially. It's a really weird film. But watching him in that, I did think that he'd be quite a cool Doctor. But I'm afraid he's obviously no longer with us.
No.
It's such a shame. But like I said, I think he would have been a very good sort of sarcastic Doctor. And that was during the 90s, by the way. One of those development issues where the film never went off the ground.
Right.
My next one is Idris Elba.
Fact. I think I know that's a fact. Because I want to go, it wasn't that long ago. I want to say no earlier than 2010, 2012? Or I'm completely talking rubbish again. But I want to go that's fact because I think I heard about something about it that it was fairly recent.
Right. Okay. I was correct. It is it's false.
Is it?
I believe it to be false. I think what you may have confused it with is less of it being by the creators, by the people that actually make the show, and more just sort of the internet.
Oh.
Because he's also up for Bond every single time, and I think he's also sort of like in the Bucky's run a lot of the time, and has been in the Bucky's run, along with many other actors like Danny Dyer. There's a really not much of a bar to be on that. But in terms of consideration properly, I believe not. Or nothing that I've seen has stated as such anyway. He would be a good Doctor.
I can imagine he would be,
He would be an interesting Doctor, that's for sure. But whether they do it, I don't know. I feel like he's a bit too hench. So that was my action for hench.
Bit too burly.
He's a bit too strong, a bit of a muscle man, and a bit of an action hero to be a Doctor. Yeah. I feel like playing was it Deadshot in not Deadshot, Bloodsport or something like that in the Suicide Squad is more his role. The action hero character, less than the
Deadshot was Will Smith.
I've got both the Suicide Squad, but there's the awful 2016 one, and there's like a 2021 one, I think.
There is two.
That's very good.
There was a second one.
Yeah.
Well, John Cena was in.
Yes. My next one is if you don't know who it is, then we can skip it. But Brian Blessed. I thought.
I know Brian. Yeah,
a bit of a punt on this one. See if you would recognise the name. So from Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
An amazing booming voice as well, and that's probably
perk. That sort of I remember he was on a car advert.
He's been on some adverts as well, and Fiction.
Well, thinking about it, I reckon he could have been in the similar situation to Judi Dench, as in he was in the running for it for a short time, but then no, Fiction.
It is true.
Is it?
I believe so. Now, it really surprised me because I felt like his role, just like him as the Doctor, wouldn't work for me at all.
I think that's why I said Fiction. Yeah, it just doesn't.
Like he just wouldn't work. Like his booming voice, really. I mean, that works for the Doctor as sort of like his gimmick.
Yeah.
For his character, but for his actual personality, like his actual presence on the show.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine him being the actual Doctor.
Now, of course, this is I have to check this just now, but this is Brian Blessed from the 60s, so a fairly young man at this stage. Was one of the people in the running to be the second Doctor, to replace the first William Hartnell, as we talked about earlier. And then he would later actually appear in Doctor Who in the 80s, a story called Mind Warp.
Right.
But
no, I wouldn't.
Very really taken aback by that one. But I suppose because of our age, I know him personally from Flash Gordon and the whole Gordon's alive thing and stuff like that. But I suppose that's what he's known for now. But back then, I suppose he was a fairly up and coming actor. So to go down that route may have made quite a lot of sense.
Right.
Okay. My next one is Hugh Grant. So, star of many romance films. He's in Love. He's the Prime Minister in Love Actually. I know Han hates that film, but
who hates that film?
Han hates that film. She doesn't like that. She prefers
The Notebook.
No, there's another Christmas film. Is it The Holiday or something like that?
Oh, the one with Cameron Diaz. Yeah, she loves it.
Yeah, because at Christmas I said we were watching that on Christmas Eve, and she was like, "Why are you watching that on Christmas Eve? It's like the worst one." It's my family's favourite.
Hugh Grant.
Yeah, so Hugh Grant, the dashing Hugh Grant, bumbling Englishman.
I thought it sounded nice. Yeah, I think I'd go fact for that one.
Go fact.
Yeah.
You were correct.
Awesome sauce.
This one was offered to him to play the Ninth Doctor in sort of 2004 for a 2005 series.
Right. Is that before David Tennant was first cast?
Yeah, so Christopher Eccleston was first.
Right.
He's from Lancashire. You might recognise him, but he only did one series, and then David took over. And he's a very, very good Doctor, Christopher Eccleston. Nowadays, he's got a better relationship with the show. I mean, there is some awful stuff happening behind the scenes during that first series, which caused him to leave. Because a lot of people thought it was his fault for leaving, and that it was bad of him to leave. But a lot of people now find understanding in why he chose to make that decision. And Big Finish and things I listen to a lot have been able to expand his Doctor a little bit and give him some more adventures. I mean, I was thinking a new one got released fairly recently, and I think he's up to like 31 on audio now. And like a couple of years ago, he had like a 13, and then that was it. And now he's up to at least like 40, and he just keeps growing year by year. But I'm afraid with the Hugh Grant thing, it never really got past his agent. And to be fair, I feel like it never would have happened properly anyway, because there's an episode that was done for Comic Relief called what was it called? Curse of Fatal Death, I believe, that was a spoof of Doctor Who by Rowan Atkinson primarily, who played the Doctor and basically made fun of the regeneration. Basically kept switching through Doctors. Through different actors,
right?
So I think he was him. He was Jonathan Pryce at one point, or maybe that was the Master actually. But loads of sort of celebrity cameos, and one of them was Hugh Grant, who was a very good Doctor, for about 4 seconds, because the joke is that he regenerates, comes back as a different man, and then immediately dies again, regenerates again, different person takes over, and I think his companion was like, "You're very dashing and lovely," and then he goes, "Oh God, I'm going to regenerate again."
To be fair, thinking about it, I could see Hugh. My bad. Could see Hugh as a Doctor.
He would be a very polite, sophisticated Doctor.
Yeah.
I feel like the awkwardness is there for him to play the Doctor. But I feel like him as the Ninth Doctor, so the one that brought it back. I think that if you did that and stuck with somebody that was quite... I mean, I feel like in the 90s particularly, Hugh Grant got a name for himself as being sort of Richard Curtis's sort of bubbling Englishman that would play these sort of characters, this really nice gentleman. For him to go and play the Doctor would, I think, been really weird, and may have led into a different path where Doctor Who did not continue. David Tennant never took over. Okay. So you've seen The Last of Us, haven't you?
Epic.
You
I loved it.
Afterwards. Pedro Pascal. How would you feel about that one?
Personally, no. I don't think I'd like it.
So you're going with that? That's a lie.
Yeah.
On my part.
Only because some of the stuff Mr. Pascal has been in himself, I just don't.
Mr. Pascal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very dashing, Mr. Pascal.
Yeah.
I don't think. No, I don't think it's his sort of thing personally. Because obviously, with The Last of Us being so post-apocalyptic and whatever, all guns blazing, explosions, fire, guns, this, that, and the other. More, no, I don't see it. I think he's more suited to that sort of thing than something like Doctor Who. But.
Yeah, so I am lying outright. Right. The reason I said Pedro was because, or Mr. Pascal, was because I knew that you've seen The Last of Us.
Yes.
Or watched some of The Last of Us. I don't know if you ever finished it.
Oh yeah, I watched it all.
And I thought, he's quite a star. And I'd be like, he's one of those people that could be Doctor.
Oh yeah.
But it feels like if there were... There's this thing where you sort of have to be British.
Yeah.
There's been a few actors that have been offered it or have sort of, danced around the idea, but then not taken it because they have gone, well, it needs to be a British actor. It's a British institution.
Sort of like a James Bond sort of thing.
Yeah. So it has to be a British person that takes on the role. And also, I think Pedro Pascal is such a confident character, and he's a great actor, but he's so charismatic and confident, and I feel like the Doctor does need to be that, but he's far too much he doesn't have the awkward stuff that the Doctor needs.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can see that, to be fair.
So it's not
almost too charismatic for the job.
Exactly. Okay, up next then, our final one. Bill Nye.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Not Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye, as in. Have you ever seen the film About Time?
Give me 1 sec. Let me find a picture.
Yeah, is it Bill Bill Knightley? No, it's not Knightley.
Nighy.
Nighy, yeah.
I do recognise him.
Yeah, so he's been in Love Actually, About Time. That's one of my favourite romance films.
He's been in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean. He's David Jones, isn't he?
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Of course.
Underneath all that sort of CGI.
Harry Potter as well.
Harry Potter, yeah, I think so. Yeah. So massive category of stuff. What's your?
Just looking at what he's been in a hell of a lot of things, which is sort of swaying my opinion towards more fact. And if it is true and he would have been in the running, I feel like he would have been sort of similar to, what was his name? Alan Rickman, that's the one. I reckon he would have been a sort of similar Doctor to that, as in quite dry and sarcastic.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Obviously, it depends on when the time that this came about.
I keep thinking as if it's just modern days.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
You do it now.
Because I forget that Doctor Who is age old, pretty
60,
much. Yeah.
60 years this year.
Wow. If I was thinking today's times, yes. Older times, no. So I'm going to go with fiction.
It's a farce. Well, no, it's not a farce. It's true.
Is it?
Right. So you said about time. I may have thrown you out slightly by accident because it wasn't, like the 80s or anything like that. It was sort of 2004 casting the 9th Doctor once again. Which surprises me because the ones I've been looking at, because I did look at a couple of websites. I did get most of them from a website called Game Rant for some reason.
Right.
That had a list of potential people that have been offered the role, or have been sort of rumoured to be such. And with Bill Nye, so he was on this potential of 9th Doctors. So you're looking at sort of 2004 once again. And I'm surprised there's not more in the 90s, because there's kind of been like a 90s Doctors, and then there's been a sort of just before the revival, because I think that when they announced that they were doing Doctor Who, you go, well, who are you going to cast? And I think that's how it came about. And of course, with all the projects going on, you've got very similar train of thought. So, yeah, he was I think the closest in terms of the newspapers of being the Doctor. So according to this article, he was almost confirmed by a UK newspaper. And then the same day that they were sort of confirming that he's the new Doctor, Christopher Eccleston was announced to play the role.
Right.
So the person that actually did the job. I mean, he himself said that all of this was not true at all. Whether he'd actually been in talks for it, I haven't got anything to say otherwise. But in terms of taking on the role and being the Doctor, he declined completely. He said no. He has actually been in Doctor Who. In fact, he was in the episode that we watched. Hannah and Amy watched with me the other month.
Oh, the one with the big, Hannah said, chicken-looking thing.
The chicken-looking thing, yes.
Yeah.
Vincent and the Doctor. He's sort of a gallery curator character. He talks about Van Gogh.
That was one episode I did watch as well, to be fair.
Yeah, that one. Was
Yeah.
that because of recent history?
Yeah, inspired by the
months.
podcast, I think.
Yeah. Oh, did you watch it? Oh, yeah, because you watched it at the same time.
I had your podcast on the
Yeah.
laptop as I was
looking at the television that
No,
had the
yes.
episode on it. Or so,
I had the
got sent
episode on the
video.
telly.
Yeah.
I was watching the podcast on my phone.
Yeah, so he was in that episode, and by the way, it really freaked me out when I got sent that video, because so when we did the commentary, we filmed it in like May, and it came out in I think June, if not July, and the amount of people that I didn't realise Han sent it to that we know meant that I've massively. So like when we were out yesterday, there was. We were talking about it, and then I was like, "Have you seen it?" And Milo went, "Yeah, I watch all of them." And I was like, "You watched? You really?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "Hi, Milo. Yeah, you okay? Why are you watching this?" Was my next question to him, and I was like, "Sorry that Han put you through all this stuff." But yeah, that's my lot of information for you tonight. What do you think about that?
I feel like a lot of it was guesswork that I got lucky with.
It was always bound to be.
Yeah.
I purposely left it open for that.
Some of them I did have to think about
Is there
quite a
anything
bit,
that
to be fair.
surprised you a lot, or were you were surprised that you got it wrong or right?
I'm surprised that the one with the dinosaur in the Thames was actually correct.
Yeah.
Because that sort of thing, just for me, I just wouldn't have expected it to air on the TV.
That's sort of the idea behind picking that one, was
Yeah.
that it would be so strange when you think about it.
But now I think I've learnt a lot, really.
You think you've learnt a lot?
Yeah.
Right, next you can watch it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'd go for it. Yeah.
Next time we do a commentary track, which is for an episode called The Lodger, I believe, we can have 4 people doing it.
Wow.
Which will be slightly too much to handle, and me just talking over it constantly.
No, I'd love to do a commentary one, you know.
Yeah. I think you did sort of think we were going to do a commentary one.
Yeah, because obviously that's the only one I've been able to, of your ones that I've watched properly. So I thought, oh great, yeah, Doctor Who, watch it, so I can actually sit down and actually say that I've watched something and sort of got into it.
Yeah. Well, I hope to get Amy and Han in one room again in order to watch this episode.
Of course.
That episode. Maybe the other one. I want to play a bit of a mean trick on Amy, where there's 3 episodes left.
Right.
So she's gonna watch an episode called The Lodger, which is just a silly little story, and then with James Gordon, and then we're gonna watch part 1 of the finale. But I'm not gonna tell her it's part 1. And then when there's a huge cliffhanger at the end, there's the stars start blowing up, the companion dies, the Doctor's trapped, there's aliens, there's all this kind of stuff going on, and then she's gonna be sitting there just sort of going, "Wait, what? You didn't tell me this was a 2-parter," and then say, "We'll do that next time." So then, like,
She's gonna end up watching it without you though.
3
if you
weeks
tell her.
later, or how, like, I wasn't gonna make her wait a long time, but I was like, a couple of weeks later, get her to do the final one. That would be
sounds
really
like a
mean.
good idea. That would be funny. That.
But I hope she's not listening to this and she's heard my plan.
Hello, Amy.
Hello, Amy. Please turn this off. Thank you. But yeah, so thank you very much for being on
No
it.
problem at all.
I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you
me.
turning up. Yeah, I appreciate you doing it because I think it takes quite a lot to share in one of my hobbies, especially when you're not used to it. Because obviously I've been doing it for years, that it becomes quite natural.
Something new for me, isn't it? I enjoyed it.
Taking to it like a duck to water, as I hoped you would.
There we go.
There
we go. I'm up for trying anything.
Just clip that bit.
Yeah. Within context.
Yes,
within context. Yeah. But no, thanks for having me on. It's certainly been interesting. Yeah.
So if you want to go and check out our other podcast episodes, you can. I talked to a whole bunch of different people. Recently I've spoken to Adam Martin, who's actually been in Big Finish and worked with Christopher Eccleston. I've spoken to, of course, Amy and Han and done commentary tracks with them. Will, my co-host, who is currently having some technical difficulties, is making sort of in and out appearances when he can, and we're doing very silly stuff. So recently we have looked at IMDb and guessed, because we know the episodes quite well, taken 10 episodes each, picked a block each and taken 10 episodes, and then tried to get the other person to guess what the score is on IMDb and try and score points against each other in order to win.
That seems like it could be interesting.
It was very by coincidence it was very close, because we were surprised by a lot of the patterns that were in place that we weren't expecting, and as you start learning the patterns change. So
just as you think you're getting it, you don't.
Yeah. So some episodes that we say are like our favourites weren't ranked very highly, and then ones that we don't like very much or don't care for
were up there.
were huge. Like a lot of the Matt Smith ones were bumped up massively for reasons that we don't quite know why. So Will got a lot of his wrong because I got a few of them wrong, and then Will got a couple of his wrong because we were sort of running along the idea that they'd be more to our opinion. It was quite interesting, really, but it was a good episode. If you want to go and check out the podcast episodes, you can, using the link tree down below. There's a whole bunch of platforms down there, so if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to listen to us on the go, which would be a bit weird, but if you want to go and check out the Spotify, for example, we're on SoundCloud, Deezer, iHeartRadio, there's a whole plethora of them down there that you can go and check out. But until next time, thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.